Jeffrey Sachs, a prominent American economist and advisor to Pope Francis, has recently drawn attention for his critical views on NATO's expansion and its role in the Ukraine conflict. In a recent appearance before the European Parliament, Sachs attributed Russia's invasion of Ukraine to NATO's eastward expansion, aligning closely with Russian narratives and drawing criticism for dismissing Eastern European nations' agency in choosing NATO membership. TheTimes.co.uk Sachs' stance has sparked debate, with critics accusing him of West-splaining, a term describing Western commentators imposing their analytical frameworks onto Eastern European contexts, often overlooking the perspectives and experiences of the region's inhabitants. Yin.wikipedia.org Despite Sachs' assertions, NATO remains committed to supporting Ukraine. The NATO-Washington Summit Declaration reaffirmed the alliance's support for Ukraine's sovereignty and condemned Russia's actions, emphasizing NATO's defensive posture and commitment to collective security. While Jeffrey Sachs critiques NATO's policies and suggests a re-evaluation of its expansion, NATO continues to uphold its support for Ukraine and collective defense commitments. NATO's challenges amidst Russian gray zone tactics.
I've lived through every administration. I've known these presidents. I've known their teams. Nothing changed much from Clinton to Bush to Obama to Trump 1 to Biden. Maybe they got worse step by step. Biden was the worst in my view. Maybe also because he was not compos mentis for the last couple of years. And I say that seriously, not as a snarky remark. The American political system is a system of image. It's a system of media manipulation every day. It is a PR system. And so you could have a president that basically doesn't function and have that in power for 2 years and actually have that president run for re-election. And one damn thing is he had to stand on a stage for 90 minutes by himself. And that was the end of it. Had it not been that mistake, he would have gone on to have his candidacy, whether he was sleeping after 4 p.m. in the afternoon or not. So this is actually the reality. Everybody goes along with it. It's impolite to say anything that I'm saying because we don't speak the truth about almost anything in this world right now. So these are projects. These are long-term events. These aren't, is it Clinton? Is it Bush? Is it Obama? That's the boring way to look at American politics, as the day-to-day game, but that's not what American politics is. So the next round of NATO enlargement came in 2004 with 7 more countries, the 3 Baltic states, Romania, Bulgaria, Slovenia, and Slovakia. At this point, Russia was pretty damn upset. This was a complete violation of the post-war order agreed with German reunification. Essentially, it was a fundamental trick or defection of the U.S. from a cooperative arrangement, is what it amounted to, because they believe in unipolarity. So the decision was taken in 1994 to expand NATO all the way to Ukraine. This is a project. This is not one administration or another. This is a U.S. government project that started more than 30 years ago. The idea was that there would be Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, and Georgia as the Black Sea littoral that would deprive Russia of any international status by blocking the Black Sea and essentially by neutralizing Russia as more than a local power. Brzezinski's completely clear about this. And before Brzezinski, there was Mackinder. And who owns the island of the world owns the world. So this project goes back a long time. I think it goes back basically to Palmerston. So this project began, and we had a continuity of government for 30 years until maybe yesterday, perhaps. 30 years of a project. Ukraine and Georgia were the keys to the project. Why? Because America learned everything it knows from the British. And so we are the wannabe British Empire. And what the British Empire understood in 1853, Lord Palmerston, is that you surround Russia in the Black Sea and you deny Russia access to the Eastern Mediterranean. And all you're watching is an American project to do that in the 21st century. In 1997, Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote The Grand Chessboard. That is not just musings of Mr. Brzezinski. That is the presentation of the decisions of the United States government explained to the public, which is how these books work. And the book describes the eastward enlargement of Europe and of NATO as simultaneous events. And there's a good chapter in that book that says, what will Russia do as Europe and NATO expand eastward? And I knew Zbigniew Brzezinski personally. He was very nice to me. I was advising Poland. He was a big help. He was a very nice and smart man, and he got everything wrong. So in 1997, he wrote in detail why Russia could do nothing but accede to the eastward expansion of NATO and Europe. In fact, he says the eastward expansion of Europe, and not just Europe, but NATO. This was a plan, a project. And he explains how Russia will never align with China. Unthinkable. Russia will never align with Iran. Russia has no vocation other than the European vocation. So as Europe moves east, there's nothing Russia can do about it. So says yet another American strategist. Is it any question why we're in war all the time? Because one thing about America is we always know what our counterparts are going to do, and we always get it wrong. And one reason we always get it wrong is that in game theory that the American strategists play, you don't actually talk to the other side. You just know what the other side's strategy is. It's wonderful. It saves so much time. You don't need any diplomacy. In 2008, as everybody knows, our former CIA director William Burns sent a long message back to Condoleezza Rice. Niet means niet, about expansion. This we know from Julian Assange. Because believe me, not one word is told to the American people about anything, or to you, or by any of your newspapers these days. So we have Julian Assange to thank, but we can read the memo in detail. As you know, Viktor Yanukovych was elected in 2010 on the platform of neutrality. Russia had no territorial interests or designs in Ukraine at all. I know. I was there during these years. What Russia was negotiating was a 25-year lease to 2042 for Sevastopol Naval Base. That's it. Not for Crimea, not for the Donbass, nothing like that. So as everybody recalls, because we just had the Munich Security Conference last week in 2007, President Putin said, stop. Enough. Enough. Stop now. And of course, what that meant was in 2008, the United States jammed down Europe's throat enlargement of NATO to Ukraine and to Georgia. This is a long-term project. I listened to Mr. Saakashvili in New York in May of 2008, and I walked out, called Sonia, and said, this man's crazy. And a month later, a war broke out because the United States told this guy, we saved Georgia. And he stands at the Council on Foreign Relations, says, Georgia's in the center of Europe. Well, it ain't, ladies and gentlemen. It's not in the center of Europe. And the most recent events are not helpful for Georgia, for its safety, and your MPs going there, or MEPs going there, and European politicians. That gets Georgia destroyed. That doesn't save Georgia. That gets Georgia destroyed, completely destroyed. So I had a long and frustrating phone call with Sullivan. I was standing out in the freezing cold. I happened to be trying to have a ski day. And there I was, Jake, don't have the war. Oh, there'll be no war, Jeff. We know a lot of what happened the next month, which is that they refused to negotiate. The stupidest idea of NATO is the so-called open door policy. Are you kidding? NATO reserves the right to go where it wants without any neighbor having any say whatsoever? Well, I tell the Mexicans and the Canadians, don't try it. You know, Trump may want to take over Canada. So Canada could say to China, why don't you build a military base in Ontario? I wouldn't advise it. And the United States would not say, well, it's an open door. That's their business. I mean, they can do what they want. That's not our business. But grown-ups in Europe repeat this. In Europe, in your commission, your high representative. This is nonsense stuff. This is not even baby geopolitics. This is just not thinking at all. I'm telling you, if I can give you my honest view, they're not very bright people. And I've dealt with them for more than 40 years. They talk to themselves. They don't talk to anybody else. They play game theory. In non-cooperative game theory, you don't talk to the other side. You just make your strategy. This is the essence of game theory. It's not negotiation theory. It's not peacemaking theory. It is unilateral, non-cooperative theory, if you know formal game theory. That's what they play. It started at the Rand Corporation. That's what they still play. In 2019, there's a paper by Rand, How Do We Extend Russia? Do you know they wrote a paper, which Biden followed? How do we annoy Russia? That's literally the strategy. How do we annoy Russia? We're trying to provoke it, trying to make it break apart, maybe have regime change, maybe have unrest, maybe have economic crisis. That's what you call your ally. Are you kidding? On the Middle East, by the way, the U.S. completely handed over foreign policy to Netanyahu 30 years ago. The Israel lobby dominates American politics. Just have no doubt about it. I could explain for hours how it works. It's very dangerous. Europe has gone silent about the JCPOA and Iran. Netanyahu's greatest dream in life is a war between the United States and Iran. He's not given up, and it's not impossible that that would come also. And that's because the U.S. in this regard does not have an independent foreign policy. It is run by Israel. It's tragic. It's amazing, by the way. And it could end. Trump may say that he wants foreign policy back. Maybe. I'm hoping that it's the case. I'm hoping that Trump will not destroy his administration and worse, the Palestinian people because of Netanyahu, who I regard as a war criminal, properly indicted by the ICC, and that needs to be told no more, that there will be a state of Palestine on the borders of the 4th of June, 1967, according to international law, as the only way for peace. It's the only way for Europe to have peace on your borders with the Middle East, is the two-state solution. There is only one obstacle to it, by the way, and that is the veto of the United States in the UN Security Council. So if you want to have some influence, tell the United States, drop the veto. You are together with 180 countries in the world. The only ones that oppose a Palestinian state are the United States, Israel, Micronesia, Nauru, Palau, Papua New Guinea, Mr. Malay, and Paraguay. So this is a place where Europe could have a big influence. This idea that Putin is reconstructing the Russian Empire, this is childish propaganda. Excuse me. If anyone knows the day-to-day and year-to-year history, this is childish stuff. Childish stuff seems to work better than adult stuff. So no designs at all. The United States decided this man must be overthrown. It's called a regime change operation. There have been about 100 of them by the United States, many in your countries and many all over the world. That's what the CIA does for a living. Okay? Please know it. It's a very unusual kind of foreign policy. Well, we're facing Munich 1938. Well, we're facing Munich 1938. Can't talk to the other side. They're evil, implacable foes. That's the only model of foreign policy we ever hear from our mass media. And the mass media repeats it entirely because it's completely suborned by the U.S. government.